Hello, everyone. Another book tonight with Women on the Move Book Club, and it is Thursday, October the 2nd. The year is 2025, and we have an awesome book to discuss this evening. But we'll first start with introductions. I'm Cindy.
I'm Angie.
I'm Harriet.
I'm Linda.
I'm Melody.
I'm Sam.
I'm Zadie.
All right, so you've got the majority of us tonight, and this is Harriet's book club. So I will turn it over to her. She'll introduce the title, the author, give us a synopsis, and then she'll lead us in our discussion this evening. So, Harriet, take it away.
And just as you say that, I left my book in the other room, but we'll just keep going from there. My book is called The Oxbow Incident, and it was one that really caught my attention back when I was a small child because I had the opportunity to read the book. Watch the movie, and it also always intrigued me. So that is why I chose this particular book for our Women on the Move book club. The author of our book was originally a, excuse me, my computer is freezing, was originally he, when it was an educator, and in his educational journey, he taught um, creative writings and things at several universities, um, and then became wrote the book, The Oxbow Incident, and he got critical acclaim for his book, and then he was it was made into a movie. His name was Walter Van Tilburg Clark, and he published the book in 1940, but as what sometimes happens in many books, he did not write the screen version. It was written by another Hollywood writer. So, Oxbow Incident takes place in post Civil War Nevada. The year is 1883, and the there were many characters in this story, but the main characters were Gil and Art. Art, Art is Croft is in the book. He's narrating the book, and different from the movie, there was no narrator. But they open their book with them coming into a small town called Bridgewater Wells, and they very small, dusty Western town, and they come in to these coming down alone, not a lot of activity, and they enter into a bar, and they're men there drinking and playing cards and different things. So what happens is while they're in this bar, someone comes in saying that one of the beloved townspeople, Mr. Kincaid, has been shot and killed, and they feel that it was by rustling. Had been a big problem in the town and surrounding areas because it was a huge, huge area in Nevada that had a lot of open land for cattle and people driving cattle to different places. And so cattle rustling had become a very big problem. And so when the person came into town and talked about Mr. Kincaid had been killed and some of his cattle, and they feel some of his cattle had been stolen, this creates this dichotomous, crazy mindset within the people. And they feel like they need to find out who did this to Mr. Kincaid and to try and right the wrong. But one of the things that I really felt was important in this book, but there are so many social implications in this book, and even some of them that we still see today. One of the things that one of the main characters, Gil, was looking for when he came to town was his long lost girlfriend. And felt like Gil Carter was his name, and he came looking for his lost girlfriend, Rose Mapin, and they were saying that Rose was run out of town by not by the women because she was unseemly or she didn't carry herself in an upright fashion. It was because they felt she was too pretty, and if she stayed around, she would create a problem with them and their men. So she left. And one of the things that and then so they assembled this posse to go out and find the people that they suspect of um, killing Larry Kincaid and stealing his cattle. Well, they found three men. There was a Hispanic man, a white man, and an older gentleman who they accused of stealing the cattle and killing Larry Kincaid. Well, what they did not, and so there was another group of people in the town. This whole group of people was 28 people. One woman was also a part of the group. So what happened was they found the three men. They accused them of stealing the cattle and killing Kincaid. But this vigilante mob took matters into their own hands, headed by Major Tetley. And Major Tetley was a Civil War Confederate Army uh, officer. And he wanted his son to show that he was a man, so he took his son along with him on this with this vigilante posse. So even though there were those who did not agree, they with their actions they went anyway. And so when it came down to it, they basically tried and convicted these men without any evidence, even though there were those who wanted them to take them back to town, try them, look at the evidence, and then see if they were truly guilty. Well, this mob in this little place called Oxbow basically tried and convicted and executed these three men. So when everything was over, they found out that these three men were innocent, and that Mr. Kincaid he had been shot, but he was yet alive, and they had caught the men who did it. So it was very much a miscarriage of justice. And for me, I think one of the things that uh, was very important was there was this, even with how they treated Rose Mapin, there was this underlying um, problem with this city, this underlying symbolism in it. And part of that symbolism to me was they relied on gossip and not facts. They are their own judge, jury, and executioners, and they underline a lot of the things in the book, and with these two different groups of people underline an atmosphere of suspicion and judgment, even though there's no evidence. They don't look for evidence, just go with this mob mentality. So one of the first things I usually do when I do book club is I say, well, who was your favorite character? Well, I'm going to flip that today. And I'm going to say, ask each one of you to name who was your least favorite character and why. So does anyone want to start us off or give us their thoughts on the book?
Major Titley.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'm glad you flipped it because it'd be kind of hard to find a favorite but Major Titley was definitely my least favorite too.
Major Tetley was mine too, because not only was he a bully and an instigator, but he also was abusive towards his son
Very.
and
Exactly.
had been since his wife died. So he was just a bully, and he thought that he was in control of everything and he could do whatever he wanted, when the judge and the acting sheriff specifically told them, bring the men in alive.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, I don't think the acting sheriff actually wanted him brought in alive either, though.
No.
Yeah, so I think I would agree. Tetley was one of them, but the other one, I think, and I'm trying for some reason, I have left his name. Is it Smith?
Smith, yeah, Smith.
Yeah, he just kept taunting things, and actually it kept inciting it over and over again. And even when they did, kind of go through some of the truths, he still kept, poking the bear, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And so between those two characters, I just, you know, they were my least favorite.
Ma was my least favorite, although I did not at all like the major, but Ma,
Mm-hmm.
she just surprised me because she's a woman, and I felt how she was characterized was like cold, heartless. Come on, you're hitting the horse that actually you volunteered to hit the horse so this man could be hung, and you volunteered to go with these group of men on a posse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she really pushed the hanging piece.
Yes.
She really
Yes.
pushed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that was my least favorite also, Ma and Major Tedley. But Ma, she just really got me because of pushing the hanging. She was just like, let's get it on, hang him. So I didn't like her at all.
Yeah.
Because it did seem like Tetley at some point was wavering a bit. He kind of kept wanting to wait, and even was, I think, inclined to, find Drew to figure out if this was the truth, or if there was a semblance of truth in it. So at some times he sounded like, okay, I'm gonna, I'm being reasonable here. I'm not gonna just, hang him. But then he just didn't.
Yeah, I kind of felt like when he was like that, the major was just trying to extend his power,
Correct.
to make it go on longer so that he could be in
Yeah.
charge of this mob. I didn't think he really,
Was
I think
sincere.
he was,
I
sincere at
think
all.
you're right. I think he really liked that power.
He really liked that power. He was excited that there was something going on in town. It was like,
Correct.
yeah.
And it
And
wasn't very far, excuse me, it wasn't very far for them to check his statements. He said, I bought these cattle. It's like, well, have any of you known Drew to sell cattle this time of the year? Where's your bill of sale? Well, it was just a handshake, and he didn't have the bill of sale because he didn't have it with him. Okay, but just because he doesn't have those things, he says, go check it out. It wasn't very far I think it alluded to 10 miles. I mean, just go check out the information. They don't care. And then when in the Ma was pushing, let's do it now. And then they decided wait until the morning because the young man was wanting to wait. And then he wanted to write a letter.
I think Major Tenney also used this. His way of forcing his son to own up to being a man. This is what real men do. So he thought he could toughen up his son by making him go on this posse and making him part of the execution squad, the actual execution squad of hitting the horses so that the horses would go and the men would hang. So it was his way of toughening up his son, and it backfired horribly.
Surely did.
Yeah, but he was only toughening him up because he, his weak character couldn't handle having a son who was,
Correct.
Intelligent.
Yeah, not as strong and mean as he was. So
Had a heart and had feelings toward others.
yeah. It was a really sad story.
It was.
Yes,
Because
it was.
when they were in town, when the writer came in and told them what had happened to Kincaid, everyone really made up their minds even before, because Davies was the one who pushed, let's go see the judge, because he saw these people are getting too riled up. Let's go see the judge and get his input, because he was trying to hold them off. And then the judge, I mean,
Well, you know, though, was it the bartender who said, "Well, did you see him?" And he said,
Yeah.
"No, I didn't see him, but I was told by somebody." So it
correct.
wasn't even firsthand knowledge.
Exactly.
And, you know, and then, you know, that there seemed to be a real big bias against the judge because the judge had a process that was going to take 6 months and they did not like that. You
Correct.
still hear things like that. That takes too
Right.
long. It was like, well, you know, not really, not when
Right.
you're making sure you have everything right. Yeah,
Exactly.
they didn't like that at all.
Exactly. But the
Mhm.
townspeople, and we don't know a lot of background information. We know that they had had a challenge with rustlers, like Harriet had said. So we don't know if this was the tip of the iceberg where they're like, oh, enough is enough. We can't deal with this anymore. So we don't know what their level of frustration was. But bottom line is, let's be fair about it. But everybody before they left, they had already determined in their minds that they were going to hang these men.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, how do you think the process of the mob mentality fit into this? We see it a lot. We've seen it in our times where a group of people start something, and some people who might be vacillating, they still go with the mob. So, how does this play into that mob mentality?
I
What
think
I saw was that the townspeople and everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
The townspeople, they, they were unforgiving as a whole. Individually, they were okay, but when you got them together as a whole, they were very unkind, unforgiving, and unsensitive to outsiders. They didn't like outsiders.
Mhm.
That was some of the things that I got out of it, especially when they killed the man. Well, they called him the Mexican when they killed him, and he was an outsider, and they just didn't like outsiders.
Yeah, I think also it sounds like the town was pretty dying or dead. It didn't sound like there were families there.
Yes.
The bartender
Mhm.
talked about, well, the only women around here are either 90 years old and blind or, you know, this or that.
Mhm.
You didn't hear anything about children. You know, it sounded like it was a pretty dead and boring place. And they'd go out and they'd do the cattle and they'd come in and they had one place where a bunch of young men hung out. And I just think it almost, and that the way the Smith kind of fit into it, it just seemed like it's such a big game to him,
Mhm.
like a playground game, you know, and they all kind of played their role in it. Um,
I
and I
think the
think,
town was already in survival mode.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when you're in that survival mode, it's like you believe anything and everything and you just want to move fast.
Hmm.
I thought it was interesting with Gerald. That's when I really started kind of liking him when I got to that section of the book, Gerald Tetley, when he said,
Mhm.
human beings are the only group that hunt themselves.
Yeah,
And he said
Mm.
they do it for power. He said we
Exactly.
don't, that's the only species that hunt each other
Correct.
for,
you're right.
and
I marked
it's
that
power
too.
tripping.
That was,
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Mhm.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Linda. Something that I wrote down that I thought was very profound. The soul of a nation or a race grows the same way the soul of a man does.
Mm.
Mhm.
That too was from Gerald. Is that right?
Gerald Tigley.
He
Yeah,
was smart.
Tetley. There were a
Hmm.
lot of
He had a
powerful
heart.
quotes all in the book. You
Hmm.
know,
Right.
those little tidbits that somebody says, you go, that was a powerful statement. So there were a lot of those throughout the book. I want to go to a question that I have. What motivates Davies to remain the voice of reason, even when he sees that his arguments are being ignored?
I think he was following his conscience and he
Mhm.
really wanted to do the right thing.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think
I
he was trying to
agree.
keep everybody at bay. Let's calm down. I think he was trying to slow down everyone. And he was the voice of reason to a certain degree because he wasn't as verbal as he could have been because he was swayed as well or just went along with everyone. He didn't stand up and blatantly say, no, let's not do this. It isn't right. Nobody did that.
Yeah, you're right.
So it was very. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Angie.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just agreeing.
Oh,
And I think he wanted
several
to be in a
times.
town that was civilized. He wanted, even though someone say the town was dying, but even if he wanted to have a family there, he wanted to live in a town that was civilized. So he was the conscience of the town. He knew that these men deserve a fair trial. He knew that, for his conscience sake and maybe a little religious sake, that it was totally wrong. It went against his belief, maybe his religious belief, but his upbringing, we don't know. But in his heart, he knew what they were doing was wrong. So I
Mhm.
agree with you, Cindy. He had a conscience
Right.
and he was willing to stand up, face this mob, and tell them what they were doing were wrong.
What do you think that Art Croft writing this story? How do you think seeing these things unfold changed him?
I thought that was one of the strange things because at the end, it seemed like he and Gil were just going to roll out and go and continue on. It didn't
Correct.
seem like it changed anybody. Maybe I mean, they all donate a little money so that the widow would be able to move back to her family, I guess, and set up
Right.
again.
Mhm.
But I mean, it, the thing is, they didn't even go after the posse. I mean,
Mhm.
Well, they all wanted to, but the Risley only picked 10 people.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, they wanted. I mean, but their conviction was certainly not as strong as those who wanted to hang. I mean,
Right.
those guys just went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
So one thing I thought, everybody's perspective is what kind of drove all these different views, and I kept thinking back to the beginning of the book with the picture that's over the bar that they have this
Mhm.
big discussion
Mhm.
about.
Yes.
I'm thinking, why are they
Yes.
talking about this
Mhm.
picture?
Yeah.
But everyone has a different perspective about who, he's not good enough for her. Oh, she's always out of reach for him. And but then it kind of plays out that everyone has a different perspective, and sometimes some people don't want to see it any other way. They only want to see it the way they're
Mhm.
seeing it. They only want to see that they have been harmed, that there have been rustlers out there, and we're not going to let this happen again. And this guy must be a rustler, so we're going to take care of it now because we're not going to be victims anymore. And I think that's kind of what this mob mentality builds on, is that sense that they've been a victim and I'm just going to stand up. I've had enough of this and we're going to take care of this right here and now. And that's what they kept saying. Let's just do it right now. Let's take care of it.
Mhm.
Then we won't have to worry about it anymore. They even said that at one point. Won't have to do it again. If we kill him now, we won't have to do it again. You think, yeah, Lee.
I think it showed a lot of different responses to the situation because like you said, it doesn't seem like it really made a difference with everything, but you could tell that with both Gil and Art, they had already in their mind, they were kind of removed themselves, that they were just there to kind of help keep things even kilter, not they weren't necessarily wanting to do it and they weren't necessarily not wanting to do it. It just showed that it was like they were kind of like almost numb to it. And even their response, they just wanted to get out of town. They wanted to ignore that it even had happened. So that they were ready. But then you look at Bartlett, who's still grappling, or not Bartlett, Davies, who was still,
Davies.
grappling with the fact that he didn't do enough, that he didn't take a gun because he didn't want to, be someone who did that. He just, and then of course you've got the two, the young Tetley couldn't handle it. And he even said that even on his conversation with Art, that, I would rather die myself. I'm gonna hang after this, or so, and so you have all these different perspectives, and you've got, Ma and all of them riling more things up, and they're just gonna go back to every day and go, okay, hey, when are we gonna do it again? So you can see everyone had a different take on how they were going. And I don't know. It would have been hard for me to live with myself to do something like that.
I think Gil and Art, you're right, felt that they were outsiders.
Yeah.
At the beginning in the bar, when they're talking about the cattle rustling, I think that one of them says, well, like you guys, could be you guys. And so there was a sense that I kind of thought that they kind of went along with it to make sure that the fingers didn't end up being pointed at them too.
Exactly. Exactly, because they were outsiders. They visited the town quite a bit, so the people knew them, but they didn't live there. So they did feel they were outsiders on there and had to kind of just go along, because like you said, they'd hang them too,
Exactly. And then at one point towards the end of the book, Davies actually confessed his fear to Croft.
Right.
It was I thought it was just a sad situation.
It was all the way around was sad, just
from the beginning to the end.
Right. There was no happy part in there,
Right. And so one of the things I want us to circle back to is, do you see some of these same things happening in today's society?
Of course. Of course. I mean, when we have mobs, people are fueled. It gives people, like, how people will do things when they're intoxicated that they wouldn't do outside of being intoxicated. It's like the energy of a mob. It's like, it's fueling, and the people who are involved in it, it's like, they're like, oh, okay. But then they get excited. And then sometimes afterwards, they don't even know what they're all excited about and what they're doing, but they're just caught up in what everyone else is doing, and they just go along, because a lot of times people just want to be a part of something, and they'll just follow someone, and it may be to their detriment. Because look at gangs, typically they aren't joining because they want to kill people. They're joining because they don't have anyone. They want to feel included, and this gang makes them feel a brotherhood or a sisterhood. And then it's like they get all caught up, and they'll do anything for their brothers.
Yeah, I would say it doesn't just happen today. It happens all the time. It's kind of a recurring thing. The book reminded me a lot of Lord of the Flies,
Oh, yes.
Because civilization kind of falls apart. And that's what Martin said. If you don't have laws and rules, you don't have a civilization.
Right.
And they threw out the laws and rules because they felt like they were victims and they didn't want to be victims again.
Exactly. And kids did that. They weren't adults. They were kids.
Yeah.
So it just shows that cruel nature is within human beings of all ages.
Yeah, it's part of the human nature.
Yes.
So do you feel
this book somewhat reminded me of the movie 12 Angry Men.
Yes.
Very much.
But in that one, at least
their rush to judgment,
one thoughtful person got
one person did,
and sometimes that's all it takes.
But their rush to judgment is what I'm talking about. They want it. Yes.
That's why, I mean, the one character that you really kind of hurt for, Davies, because he kind of took on the guilt of everything, trying to process it,
Mhm.
you know? Yeah.
There were some other social implications in the book. Um, and then there were the Mexican characters, Juan and Amigo, and the African American character Sparks, genuine three-dimensional characters, or are they genuine three-dimensional characters? Or are they simply a manifestation of social stereotypes? Because if you remember, they referred in the book to Sparks as the N word and different things like that. So what are those, do you feel that those characters were really manifestations of cultural stereotypes?
Oh, during that time, I mean, there were prejudices. It's like Sparks,
Mm-hmm.
it's like he wasn't looked at as
Mm.
a person. You know, this is somebody who doesn't have a brain, doesn't have a mind, he's not respected. And then, you know, he's just a black man. So he
Mm.
does what he does, you know, but he's not going to profit greatly. You know, they'll pay him enough to get by as a handyman to do things for him, but then to do things for them, but then they put him down and say derogatory things, just like the man who was working with Martin, the Mexican man. He didn't mean anything to them. So yes, they judged these men based on the color of their skin. But I tell you one thing, they didn't differentiate because Martin wasn't, you know, Martin was one of them. I was glad that the ones that they hung weren't all people who they would have been prejudiced against. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
But they didn't, what's the word I'm looking for? They didn't, I'm looking for a word. They didn't discriminate because Martin wasn't not white. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, they didn't discriminate because
Mhm.
Martin wasn't a person of color. They just convicted him and killed him. They didn't care.
But it's funny because they called him the Mexican who was with Martin. He was
Yes.
Juan,
the one
yeah,
Mhm.
who knew 11 language, and I guess
right.
he had a checkered past too, though. But he was
Yeah.
the intelligent one, and then he was the one who, you know, he also wanted to get himself right before dying.
Right.
You know, so I thought that was interesting because he had nuances to him that other characters didn't have.
Right.
And
Mhm.
he knew, you know, pretend like you don't know English, just and he had for a while, you know.
Right.
Right. And the other guy, what was his
Yeah.
name? Alva,
Hardwick,
who was the
the old guy.
feeble-minded one.
Yeah, why would they just
Mhm.
kill him? Because he didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But I think some of the mob mentality believed he did, you know,
He
that he
didn't
was
believe he was
even
feeble. Yeah,
possibly fraying, being kind of in the head.
yeah.
You're all a part of it. You all ride together. And these were two men who
Mhm.
worked for Martin, you know, but
Hmm.
because all of you are associated together, it's like one goes down, you all go down.
Mhm. The other thing, the letter that Martin wrote to his wife. What did you think about that?
Wow. That was powerful.
Well, I think it just showed his character and
Hmm.
also the love that he had and what he kept trying to get you know, Davies to make sure how it was handled, how, you know, his last thought was how do I protect my wife from this horrific thing? At the same time, you know, I've got to tell her how I feel and, you know, what's going on and you know, it just really showed his character.
Mhm.
Most definitely. And the sh the true character of Martin came out when they wanted to read his letter aloud, and he's like, no, because it was private. And, you know, we did learn down the road, Davies did read the letter. So before they hung him, he already knew. I mean, this letter, you have to know that a man writing this to his wife, he's an innocent man.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was just.
What other clues were there, things that you read that led you to believe that they were innocent?
Well, he kept saying, go check, you know, it's
Correct.
only 10 miles away, you can go
Correct.
check, you know, and but they didn't want to believe him.
Right.
I do think there was a time where when he had said to go check, they all were kind of feeling the same way and were like, okay. But then when I think they just called them the mechs, right? When the mechs broke free and, you know, his true character came about, because Bartlett had tried to say, no, this guy is not a good guy. He
Right.
actually can speak English better
He
than I can.
recognized him, right?
So
Yeah.
when he broke free, it was like it was one more like they were on the teetering edge of going, okay, wait, maybe we should wait. Maybe we should go send someone to Davies to check these things out. But when he tried to escape, it actually reignited the mob mentality, I think. And they were like, okay, no, you know, this guy wasn't true, even though he wasn't true to Martin either. You know, Martin didn't know his past. Anyways, I think that was another of the author's turning point to kind of try to keep the mob going, you know?
Yeah. There, you know, we were talking about quotes from the book, and there was one that I really felt was, and Davies made this, he said, the law, he says, is the greatest invention of human society. So without the law, it's like this vindictive, this whole level of hate and not trying to find out the truth. That's what happens if there's no law, there's total lawlessness. And even though I didn't like getting that ticket a couple of years ago, I still am glad that there was a police officer around, you know, to impose laws. Because could we imagine what our world would be like, or if there were none, if people were just less? And this is really what happened in this book. One of the other things I want to ask you to comment on is what was your biggest surprise? Was there something that happened that you really didn't expect?
I didn't expect for Major Tetley to be so distraught over his son. So his son's going to commit suicide. He gets saved from it, but then of course he does hang himself in the barn. Tetley learns of this, and Tetley, obviously, I think he was distraught. I think he felt guilt
Finally.
for his son's death, and then impaled himself on one of his swords. So that was shocking. That was a surprise to me.
I thought he was a coward and didn't want to face anybody, and that was his way out. His wife was gone, his son was gone, and he just didn't want to face anybody because of, you know, the way he treated people. It was,
Well, I mean, they blamed him. Everything fell back on him because he didn't keep order.
he didn't
you
keep
know?
order. Yeah. I think I was surprised that it just seemed to just end without a sense of justice, you know, that just life goes on.
Goes on. Exactly.
And there's 3 people dead for no reason, you know.
Right.
And then
And a woman without a husband, and children without a father. And we don't know about the gentleman who was feeble-minded or, you know, the other gentleman's family, but it was.
Yeah.
it was really a sad story. It was
Yeah.
well written characters. The character development showed man's dark side
Mhm.
and man's, I don't want to say fear, man's weaknesses. Really pointed out men's weaknesses, because there were probably more who would have gone along with doing the right thing, but got caught up in the mob mentality and just went along and just felt fine doing it.
Right.
Mhm.
And a lack of consciousness afterwards. It just, okay, we did this, we weren't right, but oh well, life goes on.
Pour me a whiskey.
I think two things I was surprised with was, well, for one, that Kincaid was alive.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess I was hoping that both Art and Gill would stand with Davies and, Sparks and stuff when they said they shouldn't be hung. I was hoping that, and it didn't happen.
I was really surprised when Kincaid shows up with the bandage on his head with the sheriff.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Because that was a kind of a sure thing. That was one of
Yeah.
the whole reasons they were even going.
Yeah.
And here he is standing in front of you. And I mean, they all should have been like, oh no, we honestly killed for no reason. I mean, I understand their livelihood was cattle and rustling and stuff, but murder was different in their mind. It was the murder and the rustling. And I don't know. That was pretty like, oh no.
When he showed up, I had to go back and read what the kid said that came in that said he was shot, and he was, and there was people saying, like, is that, you really know that to be true? But there are other people who were, that's my friend, and they're out there rustling, and we're all being, we're all being taken advantage of, and we've all got to go take care of this business now. And yeah, it was a sad story.
I think I was surprised by the reaction of the sheriff and the judge when the judge got there and he had realized what they had done. And he said, all of you are going to be tried for murder. And all of a sudden, the whole story changed when the sheriff told them to go home and forget about it, more or less.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they covered
that
it
was
up.
shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was surprising.
Because in the movie, as I said, the author of the book did not do the screenplay for the movie. But in the movie, it just showed the sheriff coming and the gentleman who went to get him, and he goes, well, you better hope that the Lord takes pity on your life, because I'm not going to. So in that sense, in the movie, it showed that there was going to be some possible repercussions for what they had done. But then as I said, I saw the movie several times when I was younger, but then actually reading the novel, I was like, wow. It was kind of a letdown that there was no repercussions for them. They didn't even go to jail. So
I think they had their
pretty
own.
much what I had for this.
Yeah. I think they pretty much had their own law. They're kind of out in nowhere, and they made up their own laws as they went along, and
Yes.
it wasn't good.
Yeah. It just seems like too, they didn't have any respect for the law. Because even when it said, well, we should wait for the sheriff to come back, it was like, we don't care about the sheriff.
That's
we don't care
right.
They
about what the
didn't
judge
like them at
says.
all. Yeah. They didn't like the judge or the sheriff, or it took too long, to do. Yeah.
Well, he even talked about it through, I mean, Art, I guess, Croft, he talked about there was no leader. The leader was Risley, the sheriff. That's who probably could have gotten them under control had he have been there.
Right.
And which is why they didn't want Mapes, because he just kind of incited things. He wanted to get it going. I mean, he was just ready to get it done and not think of reasoning. And then when Tetley became part of the posse, he realized, okay, well, he'll be the leader, even though he's not necessarily as respected that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So it did kind of go through those conversations in his head.
I think too that the acting sheriff, he wanted to show that he, trying to show he was big and bad to the others because he knew they really didn't respect him. So
But
that's
Tetley is, when I think about it, there was that section where Tetley, they talk about what he's wearing, and it was kind of like a put together uniform. It wasn't, I think the coat was part of the uniform, but everything else was just pants. And then, I mean, there was something in there that said something about that. And you think, well, does this guy go around all the time dressed up like a major from the Confederate Army? Or
yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Yeah.
For the respect of it. And the war was over.
Right.
It was 1883.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It stopped in the
65. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was
20
over.
years. Yeah.
But
some people can't let go, but
yeah,
the moment they had power. Mm-hmm.
Well, and
Mm-hmm.
he's the reason that they didn't actually go to Drew's place, because Amigo said no, they came this way, and Amigo didn't think to stop and tell them, to talk to Martin as he went by. Instead he just saw it as I think he incited it too, that it was a part of a power trip.
Mm-hmm. So one last question. What do you think about Farnley's role in all of this? When the guy first came and said that Kincaid had been killed, Farnley jumped on this horse and he's like, I'm going to get him. And they had to call him back because he felt like he had to be the vindicator. Do you think his actions also incited the mob?
Oh, he started it.
Mm-hmm.
He was the reason they kept going, because he wouldn't back down. He wouldn't even think of changing his direction or going and checking with Davies or going and even checking to see if Kincaid was truly dead. He just knew it was his friend, but nope, he was going to get justice.
Yeah, he was a hothead. He just, wanted to go get justice. That was his friend, and he was going to get justice for his friend.
But also, right before that, wasn't he the one that they were kind of making fun of because he wanted to play a card game that was
he lost to
easier?
Gil.
Yeah.
And so, they kind of called into question whether he was a, man or an old lady or something like that. So maybe he, that also pushed him to be like, well, let me get out of the situation. My friend's been killed and I'm going to go take care of this now,
Well, and they talked about that later in the story too. I think it was Bartlett who was talking to Art and saying he doesn't let go of things, and it takes a bunch of people to actually get him to let go of things. And so he was hook, line, and sinker. He was already mad from the poker game that he had lost, that it sounds like Gil kind of might have cheated there.
Yeah.
And so he was already hot from that, and then only to come and find out that his good friend has been shot in the head. And I think that was what Green, when they finally realized that he didn't actually see it, that should have put a pause on everybody, but it didn't.
But when Kincaid comes up, it's not like he goes running to him, my dear friend, so I don't know if they were really great friends or he was trying to get out of something. I don't know that. I think they were all ripe to do something that made them all feel powerful because they lived a pretty boring existence.
Yep.
Yep. looking for some excitement. Well,
Yeah.
ladies, thank you. That is um, the questions I had, and thanks for your insights to the book. And I'll turn it back over to Cindy.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Harriet. We enjoyed the Oxbow incident. I had never seen the movie. I hadn't read the book. So this was a first for me. And even though it was a sad story, I love the author's character development. And even though he showed a darker side of humanity, at least we can look at this and, you know, hopefully reflect and want to make some positives so that we don't keep making these same mistakes as a society now. So we can always be the instigators of change because all it takes is one person. So sometimes, you know, if we just stand up for the right thing and just voice our opinions, and it's okay if we're standing alone, so other people will probably join, but if not, at least we're right in our own conscience. So thanks, ladies, for a phenomenal book club, and thank you for your book club choice, Harriet. So that's it for the Oxbow incident and Women on the Move for this day.